All right, so I'm just gonna share OWE, Opportunistic Wireless Encryption, and just what I saw with my AP. I was using an Ingenious CW336, 6 gigahertz capable AP, and I had a Samsung phone, also 6 gigahertz. It's the S22 Plus, and I just wanted to see if 6 gigahertz was any different with OWE, right? I think the biggest difference is the devices don't actively scan or probe on 6 gigahertz. They need a reduced neighbor report. But in order for me to capture this, right, I did configure the SSID in 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz just so my device could see the 6 gigahertz SSID. But I did use a NetAli device to capture the frame. So luckily, the what I showed you was the Etherscope, but I used the AirCheck G3 to do the capture. What's nice about the NetAli handheld devices is that it will actually scan every single channel in 6 gigahertz. And the thing is when you're doing the lab, you want to pick the lowest channel possible because the NetAli scans sequentially, or you go into NetAli and if you know the channel that your AP is on in 6 gigahertz, you just say only scan this channel. Otherwise, you're just sitting there waiting for your handheld device to just scan for those SSIDs. So I have the let me show you what it looks like. I uploaded it to Link Live because honestly, that's the best way that I capture frames now is just by using Link Live. And so it just uploads the packet capture. So if we scroll down here, I did a bunch of R&R tests, but here's some like my OWE capture. And from here, I just download it, right? And I include all of these in the blog post that I wrote, which has the OWE frame. So like there's a link for the PCAP if you want to see it. That's the same PCAP that I'm gonna look at. So if I put this in the chat, you guys can look at it yourselves there. And then I also created this infographic to try to help me understand how OWE works, because what's most interesting to me is how you have an open SSID, and traditionally open SSIDs for us means unencrypted, right? Insecure. And when you use a device, it's going to give you that little exclamation point saying this is a insecure network. And some users they take that at face value and they go open a ticket and they go, hey, this is an insecure network. Should I still join to that? And at the university, we still use an open SSID. So part of me looking at this is seeing, okay, can we use OWE at the university and implement that with our 6 gigahertz deployment? And so this is the PDF, which you guys can take a look at and let me know if there's any errors there as well. But the way I saw it was your device will look for the 6 gigahertz SSID, right? And then you've got your AP responding to that probe. And then it goes through the 802.11 open system authentication. And I think a lot of people get mixed up with this thinking as real authentication, like user authentication, but it's just part of 802.11 open system. And the real magic happens here at the association request. And I'll open up my Wireshark file, but just a high level overview. They will exchange public keys. So the device has a public key, the AP has a public key, and they send it to each other in the association requests and also the response. And then from there, they generate, once they validate those public keys, they create a PMK or pairwise master key, which is then used to create a four-way handshake right afterwards, which creates the PTK or the pairwise transient key. And then after that, now all the data is encrypted between the device and the AP, which is cool, right? Over an open SSID or opportunistic wireless encryption is what they call it. And so now if we actually dive into Wireshark, and I think that's, and I don't know if I know Adrian's on here. I don't know if you show this specifically in Wi-Fi Explorer, and you can probably see it if you have the security column enabled. You'll see OWE, but I have an SSID called Dystopia, and so you see the beacon frame, and again, these captures are from the AirCheck G3. And what's interesting is look at the RSSI, right? It's like negative 69 for my 6 gigahertz SSID, and that AP was actually right behind me, and then and the air check in front of me. So my body created quite a bit of loss there. And so you got your beacon frames. Then my device here ending in 7F does the probe requests, and you get the probe response, right? And so if I expand this here, this will probably be easier. So you have the probe response from the SSID. It's a pretty bare bones SSID, right? But in the RSN information element of that probe response, you see here the AKM, the auth key management suite, the list, opportunistic wireless encryption, and now you know that this is an OWE SSID, and management frame protection is required. So the devices have to support management frame protection in order to join to an OWE SSID, right? And so they go through that, and then you've got the authentication frame, right? This is just regular 802.11 authentication, and again, association requests. So association requests and the response, that's where everything happens. So we go down here and we still see the RSN information elements as OWE, but down below, you'll see this right here, OWE Diffie-Hellman parameter. And there it says the public key. So that's my device and its public key sending it to the AP. Right. So I included the acknowledgement frame so you can actually see that the receiver acknowledges that frame. And then we have the association response from the AP. Same thing down below, OWE Diffie-Hellman parameter with its public key, right? Then they do all their magic on their device to validate all this. And this is where reading these what do you call it? The IETF stuff, when you look at OWE in general and how it works, like all that math just kind of goes over my head, right? It's not as easy to follow, but there is a specific algorithm in which they go through these checks. But then what you see here, and I think I'll move this. Oh, I don't have the other element, but once you go, it shows as QoS data, right, for us. But really, this is the four-way handshake. So we've got like EPOL frames now. So you can see message number 1, they're gonna exchange keys here. There's some salts there. Message number 2, this is coming from the AP. It's hard for me to figure out which one I'm looking at here. And then we have message 3 and then message 4. After that, I didn't include the data frames, but after that, they're all encrypted. I probably should have included the data frames in here just to show that they were encrypted, but I think I can probably get that from the file that I shared out in Link Live. So if I go and download that file, we can probably sift through it. But
and there's no changes in the authentication frames? It's just the association that's changed?
yeah, it's just regular open system authentication. Or you're
Nothing
talking
is
about the
changing
four-way
there?
handshake?
Okay.
Yeah, it's just everything is in the association request and response. Then just for four-way handshake to create the PTK, and then after that,
Yeah.
it's encrypted.
They do a Diffie-Hellman exchange in the association request for together PMK. Yeah.
Yeah, so let me try to pull up the raw file. And the reason why I share just this specific file is because there's so many frames, right? I just filtered it through the frames that are actually needed to see this happen. But this is the raw file, right? This is the same one. Excuse me. And so we have the association request, association response, four-way handshake, right? Message one, two, three, and four. And then after that, like if you look at there's another data frame here. Here. Like you see it's just encrypted. And this is the encryption is unique between the device and the AP. So it's not going to be the same keys for, say, a neighboring device on the same SSID. So I think
Have you
that's,
tried to connect to like to connect with a non-RWE compatible client and see what happens?
have I tried to connect with a known?
Yeah,
What do you mean?
because OWE, like what happens if the client doesn't support OWE?
It won't connect, I don't think. It
Do
won't,
you see
yeah.
the SSID but you won't connect?
I think you would see the SSID. So I haven't tested that. I think you would see the SSID, but because of the incompatibility that you don't have the um like you
The
don't have
support for it,
OWE
right?
on your device, you wouldn't be able to join. There is OWE transition mode
Hmm.
where for devices that don't support OWE, they just get put onto a standard open SSID, the ones that we
Hmm.
are used to seeing. So I could do another like um, a follow-up post on that where we include OWE transition mode. The
Hmm.
reason why I didn't include it in this one is uh, Ingenious doesn't actually support transition mode, OWE
Okay.
transition mode. When you go into the configuration, it's just open or OWE, and in the OWE section, it says this is for 6 GHz. So there's no option to select OWE transition mode. And
Okay.
transition mode, the last time I looked, it's just kind of it just kind of directs the client, oh, here's the BSS ID you should be joining to.
Mhm. Do you need two
That,
BSSIDs then?
that would be two BSS
Okay.
IDs.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I can test that when I get I believe Mist probably supports that, so I can do that with Mist.
Hmm.
Um, I haven't tested things like roaming, like what does roaming look like with OWE? Like, does it have to do the whole public key exchange again or keys cached? I don't know.
Are you allowed on 6 GHz? Are you allowed to do just open?
Yeah. Or no, you can't do open. You have to use OWE if you're going to do an open SSID.
Okay, so if you have transition, then they'll send you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
5 GHz if you don't
Probably.
support it.
Yeah. See that those are good questions. So yeah, I should test that. I should set up the same SSID on 5 and 6, um, and see what happens, right? Like, are we gonna have a problem where there is no transition mode? Is it just gonna like have these like one has key exchanges and one doesn't? Like, does the device freak out about that and give you an alert saying, "Hey, different"? Have you ever seen like when you try to join to another SSID and it's the
Mhm.
same name, but it went from being open or from pre-shared key to open, and it's like, hey, you previously joined to this same SSID, but it had a password before. Now it doesn't. I've seen
Mhm.
that kind of alert, so I don't know if devices would also do that and notify you of the differences in security. But I think
That's cool.
OWE is cool. I mean, the encryption piece is kind of fancy doing that in the association frames.
Yeah,
The
it's nice.
only the only thing that it doesn't protect you from is if I staged up a rogue AP with the same SSID and use OWE, you think you're connecting to, your
Hmm.
real SSID, but you're not, right? There's no way to confirm that that AP is part of that organization. So that's where like having um, WPA3 Enterprise would be better, where
Hmm.
you have certificates to validate against who you're associating with.
The open roaming stuff, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if OWE would gain traction, maybe just due to the nature of 6 GHz having to making it mandatory to use OWE. But to me, it makes it more secure, at least. You go to a coffee shop where it's just an open SSID, you scan the QR code, you join to it, it's open, unencrypted, and then you're just entrusting that the application that you're using is encrypting the traffic, right?
What I
Um,
like about it is that it's the same user experience for the user, right? They just connect their
yeah,
Wi-Fi.
it's
That doesn't,
simple.
but in the back end they have at least a little bit of encryption, right?
Yeah, you have the encryption between the device and the AP. What I don't know and haven't tested is if I do multicast, is that encrypted? I don't know. From reading specs and different data, it always says, I always see unicast and broadcast. It doesn't, I don't know if unicast or multicast is kind of lumped under the broadcast term,
Mhm.
but I haven't tested multicast to see if that's encrypted.
That's cool.
Yeah, so magic is all in the association frame, uh, exchanging public keys between each device, and then four-way handshake, which is a normal four-way handshake that we've all learned from
Mhm.
CWP studies. And then after that, encryption, and it's a unique encryption between that device and the AP. I don't know if there would be limitations on the AP, right? It would have to keep track of all those keys. So if you've got 100 devices on connected to that AP and it's all OWE, will it
Well, they
should
do
it?
it today with WPA, right? So
Yeah.
we have enough memory, right?
And then you got that, then you've got WPA3, and then you've got
Mhm.
but I mean these APs are like little servers now. They process so much. Um, and
Things
now
are
with 6 gigahertz or even bigger and process even more. So I think where we'll see OWE really gain traction is probably in your coffee shops, cafes, um, public open spaces as they upgrade to new APs and enable 6 gigahertz. They're just going to enable OWE as part of the open SSID and be like, yeah, we're done.
Mhm.
And then they'll slap a QR code somewhere on the wall. You scan it, and you join. And I've seen people talk bad about QR codes. I find them convenient. Um,
Mhm.
sure, you got to trust that whoever
There's
placed
no
that QR
security
code
reason.
there is the
Yeah.
is not a bad actor. Like that's where the challenge arises, right? Like you set up this SSID, you share this QR code, you just hope that in the public space someone didn't put a new QR code over that one, and now
Mhm.
you're going straight to malware. But for someplace like at home when I have guests, it's easier to just, hey, scan this QR code and you join
Mhm.
rather than typing in the password.
Yeah,
Helps a
and
lot.
it's a little bit more secure because you're not displaying the password, right?
Yeah, but I find that in open spaces, like who cares? It's like
Yeah.
you're telling people anyways, and then they're never changing the password after that. Yeah, so Adrian, there's that one file there that you shared. It's very short though. So you really have to look at let me try to find it. It's an IETF article on OWE, and that one has all the nitty-gritty stuff that
Yeah,
you
the
There you
ETF,
go.
the RFC is,
RFC
Yeah.
RFC
yeah,
81.
that's the one that details the part you explain about the authentication and creating the keys and stuff.
Yeah, like when
The
I
other
when
document, the Wi-Fi Alliance document, is the one that specifies how transition mode works.
Mm.
yeah, so Glenn, just to recap, because you
Uh,
came in later, but the where the keys, the main portion of OWE happens in the association frames. So you have your probe request from the client, probe response from the AP, and then goes through the 802.11 authentication. And then once the device sends the association request, there is a public key of that device. It sends it to the AP. The AP takes that key. It also sends the device its public key. So they then, validate these keys to come up with the see, I always forget the pairwise
Master key.
master key. That pairwise master key is used in the four-way handshake that occurs right afterwards to generate a pairwise transient key, which is then used to encrypt the data between the device and the AP. It's pretty simple. I like how they did it, because they don't add another set of frame exchanges. You know what I mean? They're already just using They include it in the association frames, so you're not getting association and then another set of key exchanges and then four-way handshake. So it kind of speeds it up a little bit, in my opinion. But yeah, if you go to the RFC, that really explains everything down to the key exchanges. And for me, I cannot grasp like all these different like algorithms and how they do the key exchanges. Like I would have to read it over and over and over again.
I was looking at the document that Adrian shared, and they said that, for the two SSIDs, the OWE and the non-OWE, they say that both of them shall either operate in the same band and channel, or the OWE transition mode element shall include the band and channel information about the other SSID. So we may have, one OWE on 6 gig and then
Yes.
one non-OWE on 5 gig.
Yeah,
that's
and the
usually
language is
possible.
tricky because it says may. So the vendors don't have to do it that way.
Yeah.
It's
The other
like any
thing
of
is
those methods work.
the other thing is that you were saying that Ingenious doesn't have like an option to do for transition mode, but
Yeah.
it says there that if you have an OWE SSID and then you deploy an open SSID, if the AP supports transition mode, then it will start using transition mode automatically.
Okay,
It
so
says
what
that
I
it
should
will
do
start
then,
including
yeah, so I should add that SSID to 5 gigahertz
yes,
and see if it does a transition mode.
yes.
I'm trying to log
It will
into
start.
the dashboard to show you, but yeah, it just says open or and maybe that's what it means, right? Because if I select the SSID and say this is dual band 5 and 6 gigahertz, it'll show you that it has an open SSID, and maybe it's just that it will do a transition mode. It's just telling me that it's either open or OWE. So I'll show you here. Let me see. The language that they use is just not as clear, right? So this is how my last test was. You can see here, because it's only 6 gigahertz, it says here open OWE. There's no like transition mode. So my guess is if I enable this, then we're probably going to see OWE in transition mode. That's the assumption, right?
Yeah, I would say so. And the other thing to note is that OWE requires protected management frames.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's the key part too. And I believe most devices nowadays support protected management frames. I think where we won't see that is maybe your really cheap IoT devices. They probably don't support it.
Anyone teach an L about the whole concept?
It's mandatory for 6 gigahertz nowadays, so
Yeah, it's mandatory, especially for WPA3. That's why I think any new device will be fine.
Keyboards.
Sorry, Glenn. We couldn't understand you there. I don't know if you were trying to say something. Yep, but that's OWE. Pretty cool. So I'll test transition mode. I'll also test roaming. Roaming would be, or not roaming, but like moving between APs. Since it's open, I don't know if there will be like true roaming behind there. And what I want to see is also with other vendors, like how do they implement it, right? So I haven't tried this on Mist yet. I haven't tried it on the Cisco side yet, and I'd like to see what the differences are in.
And you're lucky having all of these 6 gigahertz APs. You're what, Cisco?
Yeah, I'm kind of lucky. So I'm lucky in that with the Mist stuff, I have 2 AP45s, and we actually have quite a lot of them deployed on campus. We just don't have 6 gigahertz enabled, and that's partly why I'm trying to test it, is to see what should we expect from client devices now that if we enable 6 gigahertz. And the first thing is, and can be a whole separate discussion, right? The first thing is that a 6 gigahertz only SSID is not going to be discovered by any device. My Samsung phone would not see a 6 gigahertz only SSID unless I had a 5 gigahertz SSID enabled on the AP. In that case, it sends a reduced neighbor request and reduced neighbor report, and then that's how my device would see it. And so I did various tests where I was like, all right, 6 gigahertz only SSID, how long will it take? 5 gigahertz, but different SSID name, how long will it take? Same SSID name, how long would it take? And so different things like that. But what I haven't really tested is roaming between more than one AP. So I have 2 APs at home. I just need to set up an environment, a good test environment where I can test going between 2 different SSIDs, 6 gigahertz only, OWE, WPA3, but then also incorporating 5 gigahertz. Do I change between bands? Do I change between security types? And then also enabling 2.4 and seeing what that looks like too. My guess is we're going to see a bunch of devices like jumping all over the place. Like they'll be on 6 and then all of a sudden it's on 5. And then when someone goes back to a good, signal strength for 6, it'll jump back. And I think there's the secret sauce will probably be like what Apple's doing, right? There's a specific condition and priority in which it joins to 6 versus 5. That's what we're probably going to see.
It would be interesting to see what they implement for the Mac OS driver. It's always different than the iOS, right?
Yeah, because Mac doesn't even support fast transition. So will they implement that? How does the Mac work with protected management frames? What's the software?
You see that Apple wants to
drivers.
develop their own like Wi-Fi cards in the future?
Yeah, and I think that's probably best, right? Because then
I wonder if they will create their own protocols. Like Cisco used to do that, back in the days.
Don't give them any ideas, right? So they're not even part of Wi-Fi Alliance, so
I know they'll just create their own alliance, the Apple Alliance.
Apple Alliance.
Only one member.
Well, Apple is very much about experience on their devices, right? The user experience on their devices. And how do they make it better when you're using an iOS or Mac OS device or iPad OS? And to do that, you kind of need control over every single component so you can really fine tune your software and integration between all the components. And so I think that's why they want to do it.
Would be nice.
Yeah, and it's my guess. It's political and it's money. So they're using Broadcom, right? Broadcom is probably like, well, you guys keep asking us to do all these special things with the chip. We're gonna need more money to give you this special treatment. That's probably what it's coming down to. Apple's probably like, hey, this would be better if you do this. But then Broadcom's like, well, hold on, like you're not driving our development of chips. That's my guess. That's what I think it is.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Glenn's asking if we've seen WPA3 implemented. Not in the wild, no. I haven't. Have you guys seen it?
I have it at my house. Is that the real environment?
We haven't enabled it on our university. And we're really curious like how to do that with EduRoam, because I don't know if we want to be the first. We just want it to work because we have a lot of we gotta balance the amount of complaints from users and usability. So a lot of this I probably would try to test at home. So I need to figure out how to properly tunnel all my stuff back to like a Miss Edge, and then use our own EduRoam servers for authentication. Then in my small environment, I can implement WPA3 and see how EduRoam works.
For my experience at home, most of the devices I've purchased lately, they will connect no problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
but then
think
the other
single-handed
day,
devices, it's fine. Like I've never had a
yeah,
problem with WPA3 personal or
yeah,
PCIe.
yeah. WPA3 personal is what I use, and but the other day my nephew came over and then he had this, Android phone, and we couldn't connect to WPA3 SSID. So it looks like there's still some devices that don't support, or some devices don't support it, but they can connect, and other devices that just don't connect. They see the SSID, you click on it, and
I think it's a driver. It's
yeah.
mostly software issues. And I think Josh said the same thing in the CTS circle community
Mhm.
because he was saying that they enabled OWE but had like a bunch of devices not work. And I think it came down to like Android OS, like that. It was probably
Yeah.
that they needed to update, right? And lately I have been seeing updates from Android where they improve upon like anything that's 6 gigahertz or relating to OWE or WPA3. So it's still early, is what it looks like,
Mhm.
and I think it's kind of bold for Apple to even add 6 gigahertz to their devices because now I don't know how they're testing it and if anyone's beta testing those devices in a much larger environment.
Well, it's gonna shake the entire tree. People are
Or
gonna start moving.
or they include it, right? It's like, okay, we have it installed, but 6 gigahertz is not even rolled out anywhere. So it's like by the time 6 gigahertz actually gets deployed, like APs in different
Mhm.
environments, then they'll have the software fixed, right? Um,
You
because
think
who
they're gonna come up
has
with their own APs one day?
like I can see them creating their own APs again. They've done it before.
Yeah.
But is that the market they want to be in? I don't know. I think eventually, right? If they build their own Wi-Fi chips, they could bring back the Airport Extreme and build
More
one
for the
that,
consumer, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
just for consumer level stuff, and then make it look nice, and then have the integration between their chips and
Hmm.
call it a day.
You tap to connect.
Why
Maybe
even
they
that?
just use the
It just
home
connects. Yeah.
the HomePod thing,
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, that's true. Build
and
another
then they can do like Amazon is doing now with the Eero and
Eros.
the Alexa,
I've been having trouble with my Eero.
doing the mesh and repeaters and stuff with
Hmm.
all that thing. All
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure Apple's looking into that. Like, they probably want to bring it back, do it to the HomePod. For one, that would get more of those HomePods into every house, right? And if you say, "Hey, this supports Wi-Fi 6," maybe that's the roadmap. Probably this time next year, they'll when everything's 6 gigahertz, they'll be like, "Hey, we got the HomePod now, 6 gigahertz," and maybe they'll be like, "It's not even 6 gigahertz; it's Wi-Fi 7."
But then we could expect the next iPhone to have 6 gigahertz now and then.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. The next
usually that
iPhone
will
will
be the
have it.
case. Yeah.
It's already on the iPad. I think the iPad was more of a slow rollout for them to see what it looks like on a mobile device, what kind of issues, and then they'll fix that on the iPhone since that's most of their where everyone's at. Um, smaller scale testing. Do you guys have the iPad, the 6 gigahertz one?
No.
No, I purchased an iPad right like 2 months before. I'm like, I'm not changing. Like mine is
Yeah.
perfectly good.
Yeah, that's a problem I have too. My iPad's only about a year old, and I don't know if I want to spend the money to
Yeah.
test with it. But the laptop I will get. So I'm up for an upgrade. My wife is up for an upgrade. That would give me 2 additional 6 gigahertz devices.
Yeah. I changed my laptop last January, so I don't think I'll change it yet. Maybe next time, but
Yeah.
I had no option, so I got one. Yeah.
Because I want the dual monitor support. I have the M1 and it doesn't do dual monitor.
it doesn't do what? What do you mean? I have mine connected to a
Mine
monitor.
doesn't do it. Oh, it's the way I'm connecting it into my
Oh, you're not using your screen, your laptop screen?
no.
Oh,
I
okay. I
want
haven't
two
tried that.
external monitors because I do clamshell and I I plug it
Yeah,
into
yeah.
a base
Dock it
station.
or something.
Yeah.
Well, last time what I did is I sent my previous computer back and I got a credit against my new purchase.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm gonna do too.
It's
Mhm.
not with Apple. It's not worth it.
No?
No.
Yeah, I
Really?
was thinking about that and I was like,
I
maybe I
quoted-
could just hand it down to my
I
kids.
quoted this laptop I have is an M1. When I got it, it was probably $3,000, and they quoted me at $500 for it.
What? Okay, no, mine I got $1,400
And
back.
the Apple Care is still active on this one, so it's not even like
You're better off just selling it on the market.
Yeah.
Probably get more.
yeah, no, it's not worth it.
Because they want to resell value, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's lame.
Well,
I'd rather just give it to my kids because my kids have the oldest laptop that we hand down.
Yeah, this one is going to my wife, and I'm getting the new one, see how it's gonna work with 6 GHz. I'm curious because they haven't made any changes to the frameworks or the operating system that I can see.
mhm.
So
They're just bolting on 6 GHz to the same
yeah,
frame.
so I don't think it's gonna like for the apps for Wi-Fi Explorer stuff. I don't think it's gonna work out. I'll have to wait and see when they are
Mhm.
making the changes to the frameworks, and
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, just for your guys' reference, I logged into my Mist dashboard and it does have an OWE transition mode. It says OWE and a separate OWE transition, and then there's a third option for just open access.
What is open access?
Just open.
Open.
Oh, okay.
And so open transition, you
I
can
thought it was
select that
or something.
if you select at least 2.4 or 5 gigahertz with 6 gigahertz. But if you do a 6 gigahertz only, it's not going to give you the option to do an open transition security. Glenn's asking you a question, Adrian. Are we going to see future Windows versions of his favorite Wi-Fi tool?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm working on it. I have a ThinkPad there.
There you go.
Um,
See it?
yeah, it's actually I have 3 versions of Wi-Fi Explorer, like Lite, Standard, and Pro. The
Mhm.
Windows one, it's at the level of the Lite version right now, and I'm hoping to keep adding stuff, and then I'm thinking about 6 months maybe to have something that's equivalent to the Pro.
Okay.
Do you want to wait for them, or do you want to release like Lite first and spark some interest?
No,
or-
I'm gonna release the Lite first. I'm just have to think carefully how I'm gonna do it so I don't get people confused or upset. They get this and then say, "Oh, this is not what I was expecting." But
Yeah, I think you're gonna get that regardless.
yeah,
You're gonna
so
get all sorts of comments from people who, because that's gonna be very new to the Windows people, right? So I think having very good language on your documentation and website of what this is, and
yes,
Like a
and
clear table?
that's the thing I'm having trouble with, like trying to define how it's gonna be so that people don't get confused. But yeah. I mean, I know there are other tools for Windows and very good tools for Windows. I just thought might try to have my own.
Mhm.
And
the interface will be similar to the Mac version, right? Like menu
yeah, it's
items.
actually, I mean, I wanted to do as similar as possible, but I'm actually surprised how similar it looks. Like the
Yeah.
other day I was working on it, and I'm working on my iMac, so I'm connecting to the Windows laptop from my Mac. So I have the Windows, just a window there with the app.
Yeah.
And I was trying to find an option on Wi-Fi Explorer, and I'm like, oh no, this is the Windows version. It's not, like, got confused
You're letting
myself because I
yourself
thought I was using the Mac version, and so it's funny how similar it looks. But
I mean, if you can get confused, then
yeah.
yeah. The only reason I ask is because if I'm using Wi-Fi Explorer, and then I have a client of mine using it, but they're on Windows. It's easier for me to be like, okay, so if this option is here on Mac, this is where it is on Windows. It's just instead of, maybe the option key or command key, it's the Windows key, that kind of thing, right? Where I can
Yeah,
still be
I'm
able to
trying
walk them
to,
through if I didn't have a Mac, if I didn't have a Windows machine.
yeah, I'm trying to do a similar as possible layout and the shortcuts and how it looks, how it works, the options, everything. But I mean, some things are gonna be different because it's just, Windows and Mac. But yeah.
Man, look at that. Glenn bought a MacBook just to use Wi-Fi Explorer.
So yeah.
And then he discovered he could do other stuff. You can go online with the MacBook.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm concerned about Apple coming up with their own chips. That
They
might
could
be an
close it off.
opportunity for them to lock it down.
Yeah.
And then have to look for a job. But
You have to
well,
go back to
I
the
mean,
university.
I still have about 2-3 years maybe
You
to.
better start trying to pitch your app to Apple now. Maybe they'll buy you.
Well, many Apple guys who work on education, like consultants and stuff, they do use the app. But
Yeah, I'm sure they know about it. I think now would probably be a good time to just start working some sort of, get to know some of these Apple people more closely.
yes.
Become friends.
Well, that's the other thing why I'm working on Windows, because with every year, every update, things change, things break,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and I'm kind of tired of depending on, every year is like kind of the same.
That's the challenge with Apple is
Yeah.
you make a change, you're at the mercy of Apple, and a lot of
Yes.
times,
This past update for Ventura was a pain. It has like, yeah, it was just at the very end that they fixed whatever they needed to fix to have the apps working. So for 2-3 months, I was like, oh man, I need to
you gotta
I need to
hustle.
start looking for something else.
And then if you've got people who update their OS, and let's say the OS cripples your app, they go to you and they're like, your app sucks. Like, but in reality, Apple didn't even give you a chance to be
Yeah,
fully
I was
prepared.
telling that to my wife yesterday. Like with this 6E, if people start buying the laptops and they're gonna start running the apps and say, "Oh, I don't see any 60 hertz is not working,"
Yeah, exactly.
they're gonna blame me.
Yeah,
But it's, I mean, there's always an issue with the operating system, they always blame the
they
developers.
blame the developer. Yeah. What I would do, I don't know if you collect their email addresses, Adrian, but you should probably just send a communication like, hey, 6 gigahertz coming out.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, when people buy the license, they have a choice to
And then even include it on
receive
your blog,
communication.
like
Yeah.
official announcement of like,
Yeah.
hey, we haven't included the 6 gigahertz option yet, so you won't see 6 gigahertz SSIDs.
Yeah, I won't know until I get one Mac and see how.
Yeah, exactly, right. You can't develop for something you don't have. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can try, but like even just testing OWE, right? Like when we see OWE come out and vendor support it, like you have this thinking of it should work, but the thing is, like, no one tested it. Like maybe a developer for a phone looked at the RFC and was like, oh, okay, I'll build it like that. But they don't have the device that supports it yet, or an AP that supports OWE. They just push it. And so it's up to us to test, right? Like this is where the users become the beta testers or alpha testers, depending on how far along the vendor got. And I think that's where I think a lot of frustration comes from with vendors is they're releasing product or updates, but no one's testing it because they don't have it, right? Like
Yes.
like
And
Cisco
actually, it
or
started.
NIST, they can't say that the new laptop's going to work just fine with they don't even have the laptop. So
Yeah, and actually, I started working on Wi-Fi 7 because the draft
What?
is Yeah, the draft is now on version 2.3, I think.
Okay.
That's the same version I used when I started working on Wi-Fi 6, because I don't like to start working very early because they make a lot
Yeah,
of
they might
changes.
make
Doesn't make
changes.
sense. But 2 point after the second draft and then the revisions, a few revisions later, it's okay to
Minor
start
revisions
working
from there.
on it. And then, but I still haven't been able to get like a capture of a beacon, even though they announced, the TP-Link announced, I think Netgear and some other people announced their IPs for Wi-Fi 7. But
I don't even
last
know.
time a guy working with Wireshark, he was implementing the Wi-Fi 6 support for Wireshark, and he had access to some captures, so he shared those with me. But this time I haven't been able to get anything. So it's support for Wi-Fi 7 is there in the tool, but until I get something to test it, I cannot say it's supported.
Yeah.
Cannot enable it. Yeah.
Yeah, because even me and Francois haven't even looked at Wi-Fi 7 yet. We hopped
No.
on Wi-Fi 6 pretty quickly, but I don't think it was at revision like 2. I think we looked at it much later.
Yeah. And also I think I want to wait to actually deploy some Wi-Fi on 6 gigahertz first, right? Before going Wi-Fi 7. I feel like it's so far away.
Yeah, no, and one thing is deploying. I'm just talking about the scanning. So scanning and
Yeah.
seeing displaying the new information elements. That's
The
it.
new information elements, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, there's not even a lot of 6 gigahertz deployed out there, and I think by the time
Yeah.
6 gigahertz is out, we're gonna be really talking about Wi-Fi 7, and then people are gonna be like, "Well, why should I go to Wi-Fi 6E? Let me just go to wait for the Wi-Fi 7 APs." It's insane. The marketing around this stuff is just crazy. But hey, that's why we're supposed to test first, right? We're kind of the testers before mainstream to let people know what it realistically looks like. And I really want to enable stuff on the campus side because that's where we really get to know what users are doing, what devices are out there. But I'm also scared to get that many tickets if it doesn't work.
There's actually yeah, the TP-Link Wi-Fi 7 access point starts selling on Amazon in next month. But it's $500. I'm not sure I want to spend that kind of money just to
Yeah.
$500 for
That
3?
doesn't work.
for something that maybe it's not final. Like,
How many access points do you get for $500?
I don't know, man. I don't want to spend $500 for
You should be
just
getting
to
at least 3.
just to get a few captures, and that's it. Because I don't. Yeah. Anyway,
Just wait for someone to send
time.
you an
Yeah, I think for you, it's like trying to create these partnerships with different vendors and showing them the value of what your apps bring when using their products, or even maybe just working with somebody internally there and having them use your product. All right, Glenn, see ya. It's interesting, like just how this industry works and how they push out. You know, we have these features that have been around for a while. Then they start implementing them years later, like many years later, but then they still don't work, or there's issues, there's bugs. But I mean, that's something that we should expect, right? First iteration of something being rolled out is not going to be super clean. But we as the users or administrators of the network have to take on the brunt of those issues, and be this is where troubleshooting then becomes more critical, and why we put such high value on a CWAP is being able to really drill down to figure out if is a device communicating properly using OWE or WPA3? Is there something missing in that frame exchange, or is there something missing, a field that is off? Like those kinds of things takes a lot of work, a lot of time. Because even on a campus level, like even if I was to enable 6 gigahertz and enable OWE, I don't know what kind of devices these guys are bringing in, and how do I troubleshoot it if someone just submits a ticket and I'm like, well, okay, how do I work with this person in a timely manner, in a structured way where I'm not impacting what they need to do? That's what I'm thinking about. Smaller rollouts. Gonna need our department to pony up and pay for some devices, an Android device, iOS device, a Mac OS device, like, because even at the university, I'm due up for an upgrade on my laptop there, so I could use that as another Wi-Fi 6E device.
Mhm.
And have you guys heard of the Netgear USB adapter, the 6E USB adapter?
Yes, I think,
Yeah, that one I want to get too.
yeah, that's $100 or something like that.
Dude, that TP link that you shared, $1,199. Are they crazy?
Yeah, the other one I was talking about, it was 500, is out of stock
This is just
on pre-order.
price gouging. Like they're just trying to get it. This is why they're trying to be the first ones out, right? Like this is a money grab.
And can you imagine the enterprise AP?
Yeah, like if this is a consumer level AP at $1,200, that means my enterprise AP is going to be $5,000.
All right, guys, I have a meeting. I have to let you go.
All right.
All right, yeah, I'll end it right here. Yeah, thanks for joining, guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
I'll talk to you guys.
You're on. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.